And welcome back to Chicago Bulls Insider. Today we are talking about NBA draft prospect Drake Powell and if he would be a good fit here for the Chicago Bulls. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Modest Mazella's slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. So make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball daily here. So with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. We're talking about NBA draft prospect Drake Powell. And so Drake Powell apparently has been moving up the draft board. And so we're hearing that he's interviewed well. He did very well at the combine, and teams are very interested, including the Chicago Bulls here. And so according to Casey Johnson, who is the Chicago Bulls sideline reporter and an insider here, he's saying that, look, they definitely have some interest here in Drake Powell. And so if you want to go check this out, this is on Bleacher Nation, where you can see this exact paragraph here. But it also has a link to where Casey Johnson was on a show here talking about this. And so he is saying that, look, he interviewed well. He definitely did well at the combine. But the key thing here is that he's actually already worked out here at the Advocate Center, and that he might actually come back again. And so currently he's projected in mocks to go in the second round. Obviously, the Chicago Bulls are picking at pick 12, but was told was very, very impressive at his workout here. And so who is Drake Powell if you're not familiar with him? And so he completed his freshman year at North Carolina. And then when you look at the numbers, look, you're not going to see too much, but I think that the field goal percentage from the three-point line certainly is impressive here. And so let's go ahead and let's talk about his numbers. And so 7.4 points per game, 3.4 rebounds a game, 0.7 with the steals, 0.7 with the blocks, 1.1 with his assist, 37.9 from downtown. And so that is huge. 48.3 from the field, shot just 64.8 from the free throw line, played in all 37 games, and he started 24 games. And so he is 6'6", with a 7-foot wingspan. He had a 43 max vertical, which was, I think, led the combine there, and he's 195 pounds, and he's 19 years old. So going into the pros here for him. And so first and foremost, I think that the first thing that you see with him is a high motor. And so if you look at just his highlights and things like that, you are going to see a player that plays with a ton of energy. And so I love that about what I got a chance to see there with his highlights. And so you're getting a player that is going to give you maximum effort, I think, at times, especially on the defensive end. And so that is point number one. Point number two, really what I like about him is the spot up shooting. And so shot 39.5% on catch and shoots here. This was according to the Yahoo Sports draft profile. They're saying that he was pretty good at the catch and shoot. And so definitely looking at a player that could translate into a 3-and-D, because with that motor, he shows that motor on tape defensively. I think that that is really the calling card for him, is defensively. He plays at a high level. And so next with him, terrific as a finisher. I think that you will see a player that uses his athleticism to drive into the paint, and he's okay with facing contact. And so I do like the fact that he does use his size and his physicality to finish at the rim. And so I love that. That shows me that if he does get ran off the three-point line, he is not going to be hesitant to attack the rim. And so I like that about him. Next, when you're looking at his handle, it's solid. Now, it's not anything that's flashy or anything like that, but I think it's good enough to get him to spots that he needs to go on the floor. I think that if you looked at his highlights there were times that the defense would come with a closeout. He was able to kind of give the defense a basic move, get to a spot, and pull up. And also, too, there were times where he would give the defense a little bit of a shimmy in the mid-range and then get to a spot there. So, like I said, his handle, it looks solid there. He looks fine coming down the court in transition and things like that. And so it's not the tightest dribble, but it's certainly good enough. And so next up, look, defensively, like I said, his high motor, it really sticks out. I think multiple efforts on the defensive end. I was super impressed with the way that he was able to do that. If he gets caught on a screen, he will absolutely find a way to come off that screen and get back into the play and use his length to really impact, the offensive player trying to get a shot up. I love the fact that as far as his rotations are concerned, he will definitely make the rotations there. He knows how to go up with a player and not get the foul. So I like how he's able to use his physicality there on the defensive end. And so I thought that that was great. The lateral quickness, you can absolutely see that he has that. I mean, you could see the athleticism for sure on the defensive end. This guy will play the passing lanes and things like that. He is definitely a willing defender. And so I definitely think that that's something that you really love about him. And speaking of his lateral quickness, going back to his offense, that is one of the things that I did like too with his offensive tape. I think that when you look at him set a screen, he knows how to wait for the play to develop, and then he slides down at the proper moment to get the ball to either get to the rim or get to the next pass or whatever the case may be. So I think he's very good there. I thought he showed like his ability to also make the simple reads that, look, if his teammate was driving downhill, he knew, when it was time to go ahead and flash the baseline and things like that. He knows how to come off screens and things like that. So I think that his just off-ball movement looked good as well. And so I think that that is something that could translate for him offensively, and not just be a 3-and-D type of player. I think that he could be a little bit of a slasher, a guy that you can find, for an electric dunk off the baseline or something like that. So I did like his movement without the ball. And so next, another thing that I liked about him was just his ability, I think, to get out into the transition. I think that once he gets out into the transition, he was solid there. And I like his passing as well. And so I thought his passing was something where it's not anything where it's going to jump off the page, but he will make the correct read. And so that was something that I did like about that. And so next, when you start to look at the cons for him and the things that he's certainly going to have to get better at. And so number one, the free throw percentage. And so that is not good when you're talking about a player that is coming in shooting 64.8% from the field. Now, I did see, look, at one point in high school, he shot 80% there. And then I guess in his youth leagues, AAU, he was solid there. But for whatever reason, it didn't translate. That is something that would absolutely have to translate at the next level, especially when it comes down to late game situations. Teams are going to foul you and put you at the line. And so you want to be able to make teams pay. And then if you are driving and you do get the contact, you want to be able to make teams pay that way. And so they do not want to foul you. And so that's point number one. He's going to have to get better there. Number two, one of the things that's mentioned is he will take gambles a little bit on the defensive end there. And so that can kind of leave the defense, just kind of making an extra rotation or something that they maybe didn't necessarily need to make. Now, I don't necessarily know if that's too much of a con. That is something that was mentioned in his NBA draft profile on Yahoo, is that he will take a little bit of a risk. And so that's something that you have to take a look at that. Next, I think another thing that it really can worry you here is that at times doesn't seem as engaged as he should be, meaning this, that he has to just look at the basket a little bit more, be aggressive. And so, that really is concerning, because you don't want a player that, look, if the time is running down on the shot clock, he's going to be passive. You want a player that is absolutely going to take the shot. And I'm not saying that you're getting him to come in and be a star player, but look, if he's playing alongside of Josh Giddey, Coby White, and stuff like that, you don't want a guy that's going to be just passive at times. You still have to be aggressive. Look at a guy like Modest Mazelis. I'm sure there was no plays called for him, but he knew that when it was time for him to call his own number, he went for it. And we don't even question that. And so that is something that definitely would worry you a little bit, especially with what we have saw with Patrick Williams and just really being passive on that end. And so that is something that he absolutely would have to get better at there as far as that. And so next, look, I think with him, you are getting a player that you're going to have to really invest in the development. He is certainly raw on the offensive offensive end. I think that, look, you really are going to have to invest in him a little bit more to kind of open up his offensive game. That's something that is going to be a bit of a risk. And we know that any draft pick is going to be a risk. But I think certainly if you're talking about getting Drake Powell at number 12, that is an absolute risk. And so that leads us to the next portion here. And I just think that with all the speculations around him, he's slated to be a second round pick in the mock drafts, but he's also moving up the board, which we just saw that here with Casey Johnson talking about, teams really feeling good about him. One of the things that I did see here on ESPN.com is that he was listed as a player that is one of the most underrated in this draft. And so here is what it said about that. And so this is his teammate talking about him, talking about his versatility and how he can defend. Obviously, RJ Davis played with him. And you see, too, that one of the votes came from a player that is going to be looked at as a player that is looking to go high here, a popular pick in this survey, and one of them is teammates, but talks about the type of player that you're getting here. He's RJ Davis talking about his mid-range and things like that. And so it looks like that, look, if everything pans out, it could be a steal for you. But again, you're really banking on the fact that he's going to get to that upside. But I wanted to throw that out there, that this was a survey here. He was listed as the third player out there that could be the most underrated here in this upcoming NBA draft. And so, does he live up to the hype? I don't know. I mean, I think that it comes down to how much development the Chicago Bulls would have to put into him because, look, we've looked at this situation with Patrick Williams, which is a player comp that he's listed as. And so with that, you're talking about development. You're talking about a player that's going to have to be assertive. And I just think that at pick 12, that might be a little too high for the Chicago Bulls to do that. Now, could they go ahead and maybe get back into the first round? I think that that's something that seems to be a bit more, realistic. If you're looking for Drake Powell, I would say you would go back in the first round to go get him. Does AK have that? As far as the assets to do so, I think he definitely does. I also think that he also has assets to move up in the second round as well to go get him. But I think that if you're taking a player like that at 12, I think that is too high for the Chicago Bulls. And so we'll see what happens. We'll see how the workouts shake out. We'll ultimately see what happens on draft night and everything else. But that is the buzz right now, is that Drake Powell is really gaining some momentum here, and the Chicago Bulls have some interest here. And so we'll see what happens if he comes back to that second workout, which leads me now to the last part when you look at the comparisons. And so, like I said before, he's mentioned being compared to Patrick Williams. That's number one. He also got compared to Isaac Okoro, who plays for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Another comp is going to be Will Barton. And so he was a very good player there in the NBA, played for the Nuggets and everything else. You're talking about, a solid player that was a nice two-way player. He was a great addition there for the Nuggets, really helped build that core up. And so Will Barton, I think, would be, a nice, kind of comparison for him. I think another player, too, that he reminds me of right now is another comparison that I saw, too, for him would be a Herb Jones. Like I could see, the Herb Jones as well. I could see him getting to that type of player that could lock down defensively, become a player that becomes a bit more polished on the offensive end, not just a standstill shooter. And so I think that that's something that he compares to. As far as a player that is making some noise right now, and I'm talking about if he were to get to his upside, and talking about if Drake Powell were to completely pan out, I think he would really compare to another player that I definitely like here, a player that I think is really taken off, especially since he's gotten over here to the Indiana Pacers. But it would be Naismith. Like I think that he's a player that if Drake Powell could get to his maximum upside, I could see him turning into an Aaron Naismith type of player, which is a guy that can defend and can knock down 3-point shots and stuff like that. And he's solid too at attacking closeouts and things like that. So it's not like he has, a tricky offensive bag, but it's certainly something that would be serviceable if you're, trending towards heading to the championship game, which it looks like the Pacers are looking to do so, heading to the finals there. And so, I could definitely see him maybe turning into that type of player. But again, you're banking on the fact that he's going to get to the upside. You're banking on the fact that the team is going to be able to develop him. And I just don't know with the Chicago Bulls there, because you've already let Peter Patton go. And just with AK and taking picks where, you're swinging for the upside, it just reminds me a lot of what we saw with Patrick Williams. And so I would just say that if the Chicago Bulls are going to do it, I just think that they should wait until the end of the first round or early in the second round to go get Drake Powell. But anyway, you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking about him. Do you think that, he would be a good pick, for the Chicago Bulls? Do you feel like that this would be a player that you would want to take a chance on? Or do you feel like, no, you would not want to take the chance on Drake Powell? Do you feel like, yes, if they are going to take the chance, they should either trade up into the first round and so come back in the first round after making the 12th pick in the draft, or come back and try to get higher in the second round? So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. And as we always say, look, go Bulls, and I will see you on the next one. All right, peace.